Take a deep breath, exhale, and join us for this episode of Hope Out of the Darkness.
Shelley Pavlis is a non-professional learning to navigate the world of suicide prevention. As a volunteer of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in Orange County, California, she chats with people who, like her, are affected by suicide. Hear their real-life stories, learn how they keep living life to the fullest, and find out what can be done to stop suicide. Join the conversation with fellow AFSP volunteers and mental health professionals, all of whom have their own stories about suicide. Let's find hope out of the darkness.
Thank you for joining us. Today, our guest is Nancy Cooper, and she is the chair of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, Orange County. And welcome, Nancy.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. So, Nancy, please explain a little bit more about your position with our local chapter here for AFSP, and also what brought you to AFSP.
Yeah, so I'm the current chair of the Orange County chapter, like you said, of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I was brought to AFSP after I lost my son to suicide over 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago. And it was 10 years after his death that I was introduced to AFSP. And actually, I was going down to San Diego to join my daughter in San Diego to volunteer at events like the Out of the Darkness Walk. And I met some individuals who were trying to form a chapter here in Orange County. So in around 2014, I met up with with the people, and we were able to form our chapter. And so it was at that time that when I met with people from AFSP, I discovered that there were warning signs and risk factors to suicide that I had no idea what it was. And when my son died by suicide, it was devastating. And then somewhere along the line, I just had to figure I had to make a positive of this. And so that's why I do what I do. Volunteering, we are a volunteer organization that I devote my time for suicide prevention.
Well, I'm sorry for the loss of your son.
Thank you.
And I'm very glad that you do what you do, because you are amazing. You're an amazing leader and mentor.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I want, though, of course, I want to pick up a little bit on something that you said, though. You said, I noticed that you said that your son died by suicide, and the language of suicide prevention is extremely important. Could you explain a little bit about that?
Well, you're absolutely correct,
so
Shelley. You're absolutely correct, because if we don't use the appropriate language, what happens is that we contribute to the stigma of suicide and mental health conditions. So what we want to do is we want to use appropriate language. So typically, we've always heard, somebody committed suicide. Well, that word committed is actually very much a negative term. And when you stop to think about it, we use the word committed when we speak about a crime. He committed a murder, okay?
Sure.
And so what we do is we encourage people instead to use phrases like died by suicide, killed themselves or herself or himself. And the other thing is actually, I looked this up, the word commit associated with suicide actually started in the Middle Ages. And at the time...
Oh, no kidding.
Yes, at that time, they were actually... it was against the law. It was illegal, okay? They passed a law. It was illegal. And the persons that were left behind, the lost survivors, they had to make restitution for that person's death. So, of course, it's they committed a crime.
That's true.
And that's why I feel that that's why people keep it so secret. They don't want to pay for the crime. But that being said, we also stay away from the words successful suicide, failed or success, because when you think about it, when somebody dies by suicide, that's not a successful event for us. It's really quite tragic. So in the same way,
Very
and failed and success are actually words of judgment. Okay, so we stay away from those words. So instead, again, we encourage people to use the phrase "they died by suicide," "they killed themselves," and so that's why we want to be able to have accurate and safe language.
Yeah, that really makes sense. Yes, successful. I mean, that tends to have positive connotations, and certainly would never associate that with a death or death by suicide. So that all makes perfect sense. Yeah. And then I did notice as I was beginning to volunteer here that there were some terms too a little bit that it took me a little while to kind of remember them and use them and understand what they meant. As far as the individuals, such as a lost survivor or someone with lived experience or a suicide survivor, could you explain a little bit, about what those actually mean and who they refer to for us?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Yes. So I consider I am a lost survivor. In other words, I am a survivor. Okay. I have lost somebody to suicide. Now, for a lot of people, the lost survivor could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be a coworker, it could be a neighbor. But if you've experienced that loss of someone else, you are a lost survivor. And then we have those with lived experience. Those are the ones that have attempted a suicide and survived that suicide attempt. Okay, and sorry, you said third one.
Let's see. I said suicide survivor.
Yeah, suicide survivor. Those are the ones that survived their suicide attempt. And then we also have those individuals that may not have attempted the suicide, but have had suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideations.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for clarifying that. I know just a little bit at the beginning when I was unfamiliar with the terms.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's nice to kind of lay out exactly what they mean and who they refer to, because obviously I want to be respectful of those and people who are experiencing what they're experiencing, and I don't want to refer to them incorrectly, and I'm sure our listeners are the same if these terms are new to them.
Right.
So thank you very much. Out of respect for our audience members, I want to take a quick break for our announcement. We want to take a quick break and recognize that today's podcast episode may not be appropriate for everyone. If you are in crisis or know someone who is, please call the Suicide Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or text the word HELP to 741-741. And of course, if you feel you or someone you're with are in danger or experiencing a medical emergency, call 911. I want to go back a moment and talk about the loss of your son. I understand that that's likely the most tragic thing that's ever happened to you, and I appreciate you're talking with us about that. What I'm hoping you could share with us is at the beginning. So explain a little bit. So you said it was 10 years before you actually started volunteering in AFSP. I feel like everyone grieves differently. And within an individual, they grieve differently too, depending on what's going on in their life or how much time has passed. The grieving never goes away, but it's different even within an individual. So my question for you is, early on when you first lost your son, what are some of the things that, if you can even remember, others did that seemed helpful to you in processing the grief? Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Well,
maybe help others to understand.
Right. I am very, very fortunate in my life that I had people around me to support me. And the best thing to do is they just listen. They just listen to what I had to say. And that's the most important thing, because one of the things is that unless you have experienced the loss yourself, it's really, really hard to talk to somebody, because you really, us loss survivors, we have that one thing in common. We can understand each other. Now, the people around me, this was our first suicide. Okay, as far as for the people around me, and so they just listened. They put their arms around me. Jeff has two older sisters, and at the time they were my focus. I needed to be there for them. Okay, and it took a really, really long time for this grieving process to get to the point where I could talk. Talk about it. Talk about the circumstances. And the other thing is, I found really, really helpful, is that we did not, as a family, did not stop talking about Jeff. So imagine if you will, that we are at a Thanksgiving dinner a year or 2 or 3 years later, and we still say, you know what, Jeff would have liked that pie. Or remember what Jeff did, 10 Thanksgivings ago. Or his name is brought up. And it's very, very important to me that, he's not forgotten that, and he's still with us. And it's okay to say his name. It's okay to say that he's my son. I still refer to him as my son. People still ask, when people ask, how many children do you have? I say 3. So it's very important to me that people, will say, we remember Jeff when.
That is really helpful information. So, so you think too that for others, would it be helpful if, for instance, I remember back when my son's friend died by suicide, and I was sitting with his parents, and this is going to happen a lot on this podcast. Sorry. So, and this is what keeps it real, everybody. Take a breath, Shell. So one of the things that the family wanted were memories of their son, and they wanted us and asked us if we would provide them with pictures or videos that we had of their son with our family members or friends. One of the things that I remember that I did was he had asked me to do I forget what we called it at the time, but it was a referral letter, really. And so I still had that in my computer. So I gave that to his parents because obviously I had thought about all the wonderful things and why I thought he was a great young man. And I'd written down all of these positive thoughts that I had of him. And so I gave that to them, and they really appreciated it. So So that, it sounds like, is something that we could all do to help lost survivors. And then how, to kind of turn the tables, is there anything that you remember back then, anyone said that wasn't helpful or maybe was a little bit hurtful at the time, or kind of made you stop a little bit?
Yeah. First, let me comment. I think the idea that you found that letter and gave it to his parents, I think is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful gesture. I mean, what a memory, a fabulous memory, and I do applaud you for doing that. As far as, I honestly don't remember. I remember more the following years and months, some, in my opinion, very inappropriate comments to me. And
okay,
those are more devastating as time went on. And it's like, I'm ready. I'm talking about it, and I have my voice. I love your shirt, Be the Voice. I have my voice. I talk about Jeff. I talk about his suicide, and saying that he did die by suicide. And it's the now the unfortunate comments that are made, and I take it from, I kind of give people the leeway thinking that they just don't know what they're saying. They don't realize what they're saying. And so that's why we're trying very hard to educate the public about suicide prevention and, the appropriate language.
Okay, thank you. So some people still, even today,
Oh, yeah.
do sometimes say things? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Would you mind sharing some of those so that maybe our listeners, if they haven't encountered this, maybe we could help them learn possibly what types of messages aren't appropriate?
Well, there was one very, very significant to me, and it just devastated me that I had somebody tell me, well, actually, she, at the time, she was not thinking. She said to me, it's the Orange County moms that are causing this rash of suicide in our youth, because all they're doing is throwing money at their kids and letting them do what they want. My breath was taken away. Basically, she was accusing mothers. And as a mother, I know quite different. My circumstance. And that was just, I mean, I couldn't say a thing. And the other thing that is a comment that I am leery of is, well, we're glad to see you got over it. I haven't gotten over it. I've just learned to live again. So I have I printed out a quote and put it on my desk. And what's funny is that this quote came to me about 6 months ago. Because believe me, 20 years ago, it was unfathomable to me that I would be into the future 20 years later and Jeff be gone. I just couldn't, you can't imagine your life going forward. And what's funny is that so we all have COVID, and we're watching Netflix a lot, and I'm watching a program, and there is a young woman in the drama who lost a fiance to a tragic death, not suicide, but to a tragic death, and she was just devastated, and then how do I go on with my life? And the woman, an older woman, said to her, "You just keep on living until you are alive again." And that quote just hit me in the face, and that's exactly what has happened to me. I just kept living, but now I'm alive again. And it's not that I'm not grieving. It's not that I haven't gotten over it. It's just that I went on living.
That's a great quote and a great message. Thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And I wanted to move on and talk a little bit more about your role with AFSP. Being the chapter chair has got to be a lot of work. So, explain a little bit why you do it. What do you get out of it?
Well, that's very, very simple, because at one point in time, I had to put a positive, make Jeff's death a positive. And and one of the things that I say a lot is that I want to prevent other mothers experiencing the same pain that I did. Now, I don't mean to automatically discard the dads. They're just as important and they're just as special. But understanding that my perspective is from a mom, and I don't want to have other moms feeling the pain that I did. And so I'm in a position that I'm able to give my time to AFSP, and it's help giving me a purpose in life.
One of the things that you do is AFSP has a presentation called Talk Saves Lives. Could you tell us a little bit about that program? I just became certified to do that as well. So tell our listeners what it's about and some of the things that we are able, hopefully, to educate people on with that presentation.
Oh, thank you for asking about it. Actually, Talk Saves Lives is one of my I think it's the boots on the ground suicide prevention action that we can take to help educate the public, because it's a community-based presentation that talks about suicide. It talks about the research that has been given about suicide. It talks about the warning signs and the risk factors, and it talks about what we can all do to help prevent it. We have it in English and Spanish for the standard version, and we have a senior version as well. We also have a version for firearms owners and the LGBTQ version. And so it's the basic, and it's like I said, it's a community base, so it's non-clinical. Everybody should be exposed to this language, to this information that we have, because I get it all the time. People saying, "Wow, I had no idea of the things that we're telling, especially about the risk factors and warning signs." So it's valuable information for everybody. I too found those
super helpful.
Oh, super, super helpful.
Yep.
And to let you know that Jeff had the warning signs and risk factors, and I didn't know it. I didn't see them. I didn't realize it. So that's that's why it's so important to me, and that's why I'm very, very excited about this particular program that we have.
Yeah, it's a great program, and the research has shown that suicide is preventable.
Yes,
and that's huge. We need to get that word out.
Yes, you are absolutely right.
So important. One of the things that you have recently started is a kind of a mini social media movement. Tell everybody what Duck Duck Hope is about, please.
I'm excited about this little campaign that I have, that we have going. So it's called Duck Duck Hope, and we get these little rubber duckies that are absolutely darling, and I didn't realize that rubber duckies came in all kinds of colors and themes, and we put and they're just darling, and we put a sign on the duck that basically says, "We hope that this duck brings a smile to your face, and I hope that it brings hope, because you are not alone." And then what it has on it, it has the crisis intervention line, the lifeline prevention line, for people to call if they're in crisis. And it has the text number, the crisis text line that people can call if they're in crisis. And what we're doing is we're putting this out in the community. We put our little ducks out. And then what I'm encouraging people to do is take a picture, put it on your social media with the hashtag DuckDuckHope. And so we're spreading the word of hope. You are not alone, both physically and by way of social media. And
that's great. That's great.
So
and also getting,
yeah, I'm happy to say that
getting the lifelines out there too.
You betcha. And I'm happy to say that there are some high school kids that have kind of embraced this idea. So it's a, I'll say, fun, but it brings it reaches out to our inner child. Okay, when we see this cute little ducky, and to let you know also the suicide prevention line, the lifeline, and the text line, anybody can call those, whether or not, just to get the information. You can say, hey, I'm calling this number and I want to see how it works. Or if you are worried about someone, okay, you can call the lines and you say, you know, my friend is saying such and such, and I don't know how to respond to that. And the person, the trained counselor on the call can help you out with that. So I've told several people who have persons in their life that are struggling and they don't quite know what to do, they don't quite know what to say, they call the prevention line.
I think that's really good information. I was told that maybe it was by you when I joined AFSP, and I called. I wanted to talk to someone, and I had some questions that first of all I wanted to see the process. So if someone asked me what happens when I call, I could tell them.
Exactly.
And and so when I called, I forget what time of day it was, but I did not get someone who answered my call immediately. There was some time that went by and a message, and the thing to remember is that the attempt is to try to connect you if you call and you are in crisis and you're not just calling like I was to get information. The attempt is to connect you with someone who's local.
Yes.
So they're routing that call, so that can sometimes take a little time. So hang in there, and then you can ask. Yeah, you could. I just told them who I was and that I was a volunteer with AFSP, and that if it was okay and I wasn't, taking up their time, which could go to someone who was really in need. I had a couple questions, and they answered my questions. So I definitely would encourage anyone who's interested in seeing how it works to do that. That's a really, really good suggestion.
Oh, Shelley, thank you so much for being proactive. Yes, thank you so much for being proactive because this is wonderful. Yes.
Now, there are a lot of resources, tons of resources. Part of what we're doing is trying to get the word out and get those resources to people and let them know that they're available. Of course, we will have the resources and the links for AFSP OC and AFSP in the show notes. And there are some other local foundations and organizations that AFSP OC partners with. Orange County Be Well, NAMI, just to name a couple. There are more. I wanted to see what kind of your favorite, I don't know if you have a couple resources that you seem to use more than others and pass along to people. Do you have a couple, favorites is the wrong word, but do you have a couple that you kind of consistently use that you like that we could point out to people?
Well, yes, actually, you mentioned one of them already, NAMI. NAMI is amazing. They have so many classes and resources for families, and for children, for parents, for adults, which I think is also amazing. Another organization that we work with and that we tell people about all the time is the Dee Dee Hirsch Foundation. They are amazing. They have lots of resources also. I've also been introduced to MECA, which is the Multi-Ethnic Collaborative of Community Affairs, and they, like their name implies, it's multicultural. So they have lots of resources in their communities also. We have the Council on Aging here in Orange County. So they have specifically worked with the seniors in our county, and education and care of the seniors. Chalk Hospital. They have a mental health unit for their kiddos, and they are a great source of resources, or at least if they have can help with questions concerning the children. And Hoag Hospital, UCI. We work with them all to help get the word out. But I say Didi, Hirsch, and NAMI and MECA are probably the three of the biggest that we work with, at least refer people to.
Terrific, and we will throw links to all of them in the show notes, so everybody will have access and get to see all of the wonderful information that everyone has. Our next segment is listener question. So we have we reach out to our audience.
My friend's son killed himself a few months ago. What can I do to help him?
It wasn't their fault. Let them know that that the person who died by suicide has probably all kinds of stressors, life instances, and the person who died by suicide, for the person who is suicidal, at that moment in time when they are in this pain, they don't see any other option. For them, there was no option. And so a lot of people who say that they've know somebody close to them who died by suicide, they have these guilt feelings. I should have known. Well, we didn't. We didn't know. And so don't take that guilt along with you. And the other thing is to make sure that the lost survivor takes care of themselves and they practice self-care strategies in their own life, to reduce either their stressors or to help them with their own mental health. It's very important, especially for the survivors, for the lost survivors, to take care of themselves so that they stay healthy mentally and physically.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm sure that'll be helpful to Chris. And then since you mentioned actually self-care too as well, I always like to end asking my guest what is something that you do for self-care that maybe you could share with our audience that maybe might be something that resonates with them.
I love to take walks. I take walks every morning, and it sort of clears my head. The other thing I do, well, it's sort of similar, but I like to get out and hike. Because when I walk in the morning, I'm walking in the neighborhood. But what I do like to go is to the different community parks where there's lots of trees and it's open. And so I like to walk or hike in those particular areas. I took up the ukulele in the past year and a half, so that's kind of an outlet for me that I like to do, and just talking to people as best as I can to stay connected. That's a real outlet for me. It's really, really nice. And the last year and a half, not quite a year and a half, but it's been the Zoom environment. But also it's by letters and by phone calls, or emails and phone calls is how I stay connected with people. And I'll just call and say, hey, how you doing? It's nice to chat for a little bit. And sometimes it's only a 5 or 10 minute chat, but at least I'm connecting with people. And that really, really, really helps me. It lifts my spirits. And it's nice to connect with people that you've known, especially people that you've known for a long time. And, one friend lives in Florida now, and it's just a quick phone call, and we can chit-chat and see how we're doing.
Good suggestions, and I love that you actually have resorted. Who would think that actually talking to someone on the phone or writing a letter to someone would be something that we were no longer really used to doing. But I love that.
Yes.
That, those are things that you've been doing as well to connect with people. Well, thank you so much for being here, Nancy. Really appreciate it. And like I mentioned, all of the information that we've discussed will be in the show notes. And
Shelley, I want to thank you so much for having us here and talking about suicide prevention. It warms my heart, and everything that you are doing in the community for suicide prevention. It's very much appreciated by us. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Nancy.
If you are in crisis or know someone who is, please call or text the Suicide Lifeline. You can find out how to reach the Lifeline by looking for the numbers in the show notes of every single episode. If it wasn't glaringly evident in today's episode, I'm not a mental health or suicide prevention professional, and this is not an official AFSP podcast. I am determined, however, to find a way to help stop suicide in my community and to support those affected by suicide.
Thanks for listening to Hope Out of the Darkness. To learn more about Shell, the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, and how to submit listener questions to be answered on the show, visit hopeoutofthedarkness.com.